Air raid sirens sounded across Ukraine last night. Russia launched its largest round of airstrikes in nearly 2 months, killing at least 25 people, including 2 children. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber has more tonight from Ukraine.
Tonight, a frantic search for survivors after a barrage of deadly Russian airstrikes. Rescuers combing through smoldering concrete and metal. It is all that's left of an apartment building in Uman after a missile hit in the middle of the night. Residents were fast asleep. Marina telling us she lives nearby and rushed over to help.
Is anywhere in Ukraine safe?
Nowhere. Nowhere. I moved a lot since the war started. Nowhere is safe.
Among the dead, at least 4 children. People here are overwhelmed with emotion. The safety of a home shattered by Russia's war again.
Russia claims they were targeting military-related spaces, but you look at the people here, the little ones included, and you realize what a residential part of the city this is. These are apartment buildings all around. This one, the apartment building that was hit the hardest, people who live here say this side of the building, that's where most of the bedrooms were.
These were the first large-scale Russian missile strikes in nearly 2 months, hitting several cities. A strike in Dnipro killed a toddler and her mother. In Kyiv, a child was injured. Back in Uman, we met Daria, a 20-year-old volunteer.
The most heartbreaking part was like the loud cries of women. I saw the man who was crying because he's the only one who's still alive from of his family.
Tonight, Ukraine's top military official says they are getting closer to launching that highly anticipated spring counteroffensive to try and take back territories now occupied by Russia.
Thank you for that. Well, back with us tonight is William Taylor, former United States ambassador to Ukraine. He's also the United States Institute of Peace vice president for Russia and Europe. Ambassador, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ali.
We are seeing this new activity from Russia in the face of several months of not very meaningful successes on Russia's part. And there's all this talk about a spring offensive from Ukraine. It's sort of the all the weaponry that they got over the last few months, sort of a demonstration that they can take this, they can train on these weapons, and they can do something, which involves probably taking back some territory. Give me a sense of what this all means, because every day in the news, our viewers are hearing about this expected spring offensive.
And I believe it's coming. I believe that the Ukrainians are preparing. They've gotten somewhere, Ali, between 9 and 18 new brigades, some of which have been trained by NATO forces, all of which have these new weapons, all of which are prepared for this big offensive. The generals, the Ukrainian generals, Ali, have been extremely good at the military art of deciding when and where to attack. They've feinted before and then gone to a different direction. So they're preparing, and they know this is an important operation for them.
Ambassador, talk to me about the staying power of the West and NATO. There were several months ago, you and I spoke about it, in which there were calls to say, don't do this drip, 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 6 weeks at a time war. Commit what you can to Ukraine now so that they can win this war. And a lot of countries took that up. The Germans provided the Leopard tanks. The Americans provided the Abrams tanks. Pretty much short of the F-16s, Ukraine got much of what it needed. Now something has to happen, experts say. They say that something has to happen to continue to get the support of voters and taxpayers in these Western countries to continue to back Ukraine.
You're right. You're right. Something does have to happen, and the Ukrainians know it. Ukrainians are preparing. They can concentrate these new forces, Ali. They can concentrate against these dug-in Russian lines. We've seen, you've described and reported on these Russian fortifications up and down the line. What the Ukrainians have to do is concentrate these new forces, these tank forces, and break through those lines. They have to find a place to break through those lines and then exploit. And once they do that, they can run through that breach of the line, and that can have a devastating effect on the Russian morale. That will have a good effect, a positive effect on Ukrainian morale, on European morale, on American morale, this will have a great effect on the ability to pursue this war.
You know, we talk a lot about the weaponry and the arms, but I want to talk about the Ukrainians and their military. I was speaking to the former president, Petro Poroshenko, who said that after the invasion of Crimea, one of the things that Ukraine did, though it is not a NATO country, it would like to be, is that they started to adopt NATO warfare techniques, something that the Russians still have sort of older Soviet warfare techniques, which is why those battles in eastern Ukraine look a little bit like old war battles. The Ukrainians have had to you can throw all sorts of weapons at a lot of people. If they don't use them well, if they don't train on them, if they don't manage to use them to effect, it's of no use. The Ukrainians have done that. That has exceeded all expectations.
It's exceeded all expectations, and that's what they're training on right now. These new units that we were just talking about, that's exactly what they're training to do. It's maneuver warfare. It is using the tanks, it's using the infantry, it's using the artillery, it's using long-range fires. You're right, it's probably not going to be the F-16s, but there are other long-range fires that can be brought to bear on the Russians to enable this maneuver warfare to break through these lines and then run through and get into the Russian rear. Once that happens, the Russians can panic. That's what they've been training on in Poland. The Ukrainians have been training in Germany at U.S. bases, and the Ukrainians have been training in western part of Ukraine. So that's exactly what they're preparing for.
Let's talk about Zelensky and President Xi of China. They had a meeting that was described as long and meaningful. Now, China is a friend of Russia's, but at this point, they have not put their thumb very heavily on the scale in favor of Russia. I'm worried in a world of ammunition and arms shortages and soldier shortages in Russia that when and if China decides to put their thumb on the scale for Russia, that could be a game changer. Tell me about Xi and Zelensky talking together. This is something Zelensky has wanted for some time. He felt that if he could talk to Xi, he could impress upon him the importance of not helping Russia win this war.
And President Zelensky may have gotten that, Ali. He may have gotten that. We don't know exactly what went on. Over an hour conversation. But one of them came out. One of the Chinese came out and said that President Xi had said they were not going to throw fuel on the fire. That sounds to me like they're not going to provide the weapons and the ammunition that you just mentioned to the Russians. The Chinese are in a difficult position. They would like to step up and be a big player on this, but they know they can't as long as they're so closely associated with the Russians. And a good conversation President Xi had with President Zelensky, it goes some distance, some way toward indicating that the Chinese are recognizing the value of the principles that they've had been. That is sovereignty. That is territorial integrity. And that's what the Russians have violated in Ukraine.
Ambassador, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your analysis tonight. Ambassador William Taylor.